Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I'm Tony Guerra, your host, and today I have Taylor Klempel, who is a pharmacy business development manager at Careerstaff Rx. It's a Genesis healthcare company. He's a graduate of the Boise State University and currently works in the greater Seattle area. Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thank you, Tony, very much. Glad to be here.
Well, we're getting at that time of the year where a lot of students are looking for jobs and other people are looking for jobs. Anytime we go from, kind of a winter to spring, there's kind of renewal. So I wanted to bring on somebody that knows a lot about the job market, especially for pharmacists, and you're an expert on that. So could you tell me first a little bit about what it is you do and what makes you an expert in helping pharmacists get jobs?
So we're a national pharmacy staffing and recruitment company. The easiest way to look at what we do is we help pharmacists get jobs. So we use our resources and our connections in the industry to help you land a specific job you might be looking for. And a lot of times, we have better success than, a candidate out looking for a job themselves and trying to go through the traditional hiring process. We can help expedite that.
Okay, well, a lot of times it's helpful to look from the other perspective to kind of figure out what someone wants. So certainly some areas of the country are a little bit tighter in terms of job market. But let's start with, how does a career staffing agency help, let's say, a large 400, 500 bed hospital?
We do everything from day of sick coverage all the way up to the full-time permanent placement. So if we're going to be working with, a larger hospital, we can help them with hard to staff positions on a full-time basis. We do a lot of maternity leave coverages, or if there's a high census for whatever reason, they need some extra help, EMR upgrades. We kind of handle all of that. So what we do is if they reach out to us, we have, in most major markets across the U.S., large float pools of candidates that we can draw upon for any of these positions. So if we have to recruit specifically for this position, then, obviously we tailor our search to exactly what the hospital might be looking for in terms of their years of experience, skill set. And then, we always go through the first round of interviews ourselves. And then we try to send over our clients or potential clients the top candidates that we have, so that they can only, they only have to interview one or two, maybe three people instead of, a list of 100 or 200 applicants that are coming through, depending on which market that they're hiring in.
So if I'm a pharmacy director at a big hospital, normally if somebody called in sick or two people called in sick, I would have to get on the phone to kind of my own phone tree, but instead they just make a call to you, or that's sometimes how it works?
Yeah, that's how it works a lot of times, especially on the retail side. The hospital is a little bit different. Those are typically a little more long-term. The training curve is a little steeper, but we definitely have hospitals that call us for day of coverage. But yeah, absolutely. We have a 24-hour after hours line. So, something, usually people don't plan ahead when they're getting sick. At least they shouldn't be. So we get calls all hours of the night, and we always have someone that has our after hours phone that can respond to them, immediately of who we might have available. So yeah, we get calls like that, probably daily for, last minute coverage.
Okay, so I'm from Iowa, so we have a number of underserved counties. How do you serve maybe a smaller hospital or a smaller institution that maybe isn't in one of the larger metros?
It depends on the situation. If they're looking for someone on a permanent basis, there's going to be parts of the country that are just harder to staff, and that's the reality. So we've kind of seen it all. We've, hired people from out of state, and we can cover travel costs on a temporary basis, or, cover relocation costs if it is for a permanent position. But, typically we'll have those conversations with the hospital. And if they're in a remote area, they understand that, hey, there's only 4 licensed pharmacists within, 80 miles of here, and we're in contact with all of them. How can you help? A lot of times we have the resources to bring in someone from an outside city or county that can help on a temporary or long-term basis.
Okay. So now let's switch back to the person who's applying for a job. So I guess in my head, I thought that when I would come to a staffing company, I would go to the staffing company and then we would kind of get a job in a couple of weeks or something like that. But it sounds like it's a very different process where maybe somebody comes in and you build a relationship with them and then kind of we wait for either a job to open or you kind of start looking. Can you tell me how that process works for someone that might start looking for a job through a service like yours?
The biggest thing, we get kind of grouped in with temp agencies, and in a certain way we are, but we try to, we try to distance ourselves from that term as well, because there's certain temp agencies that there aren't a lot of requirements and they just kind of hire whoever has a license. And that's not the approach we take, because we want to make sure when we're marketing our candidates to our clients that they're getting, the best of the best. So we treat our employees as if they're an internal employee. So we go through the full hiring process. If it's local, we're going to bring them into our office so that they can see that we're a real company and we have a lot of people that work in our office and we have a lot of fun, and they can see the culture we have. And there's just more of a buy-in from that aspect, so that then when they're out in the field working for our clients and they have our name badge on, they're respecting and honoring our company just like they would be an internal employee. And I think that goes a long ways too, because we get calls from directors and pharmacy managers that just, have nothing but great things to say about our employees. And, we love hearing that when they're representing our company out in the field. So we try to treat all of our external employees as if they were on our internal staff.
Well, tell me a little bit about what it is to go looking for a job these days. I've had the same job for a decade almost, so I'm kind of out of the market and kind of out of the loop of how things work. We actually used paper resumes, I think, a decade ago. There was no LinkedIn. I think it might have been like iPhone 1, if there was even an iPhone. So just a completely different world. So tell me a little bit about what is the process that someone goes through now to go and get a job, and maybe their spouse moved somewhere and then they had to move there. What kind of recommendations do you have for going through this process, and take your time going through each step?
To answer the second part first, yeah, if you're going to be relocating, or maybe a spouse was offered a job opportunity and you're going to be move into a different state. And, obviously the sooner you have that information, the better. I highly recommend, contacting our company, because then we can give you realistic expectations of what jobs are available in the market you're moving to. And if maybe you have more of a clinical background, but you'd like to get in more of a retail side, or maybe you have a, retail background and you want to get more in some specialty positions or hospital positions or whatever the case is, contact a company like us, and then we can start doing some of the work on the front end before you even get into town, setting up some phone interviews, calling our contacts in the area, so you can feel better about the transition, knowing that you already have a couple things potentially lined up for when you do get into town. And then just as far as, the hiring process, yeah, we still deal with, paper resumes. Obviously they're coming in electronically, but if we need to print them off and write on them, we do. We do it all the time. I know
Okay.
Those things. But yeah, we go through the full hiring process like you would anywhere else. And then we have to run our full background check and series of drug screens and get your immunization records, and nothing different than any other company would be hiring you directly. And then the best part is too, most of our clients are going to need that information before you can start. So if we have it done ahead of time, then that really expedites the hiring process once we've already taken care of everything on the front end.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about a float pool before. Can you tell me a little bit about the float pool from the employee side? So, if I'm working at maybe a major chain and I'm in the float pool, I'm guaranteed my 40 or 32 or whatever it is with the contract. But can you tell me a little bit more about the float pool and what it's like to be in a float pool for a staffing company?
We have float pools all over the country of just employees that, are ready to work in quite a few different settings. And obviously some markets are better than others, of course, but what that kind of means is exactly what you said. We still have guaranteed, full-time positions with our company, where we'll guarantee you full-time hours and then cover all of your medical, dental, all of your benefits, but you might not work at the same place every day. You might work at a retail location Monday, Tuesday, and there might be a specialty clinic that needs you Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever the case is. You might still get your 40 hours a week, but you might just work at different locations. So that's part of our interview process. We set a limit on where you're willing to commute to, and then we only send you shifts that are within that driving distance. So if you have a 30-mile commuting radius, then we'll make sure that we don't send you, shifts that are outside of that range. And, we'll still keep you busy every day. You might just work at different locations. And we just have so much success with that too. I know a lot of times folks that haven't worked as part of a float pool before, the beginning, they can be kind of hesitant, kind of thinking like, oh, shoot, I couldn't find a full-time job. I guess I'll settle for this, but that's not the case at all. It's great. You can get experience with so many different settings and so many different managers and directors and employees, and you can get experience at so many different places. So when full-time positions open up, you can be like, you know what, I want to stay as far away from that place as possible, or, hey, I really want to get a job here because the staff was great. They treated me like one of their own. The manager was phenomenal. I could really see myself working there. So it's just great to kind of get a little bit of experience at all different locations. And you can't get that really anywhere else unless you're part of a float pool for a staffing company like ours.
So I hear over and over again that some of the best jobs never make it to the advertisement. Can you tell me a little bit about jobs that just don't make it to being advertised because you've kind of already got a relationship and it goes to you and then it goes to the guys and kind of whether in the float pool or kind of in your queue. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of the different strata of jobs? So some jobs are just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe a job here opened up. Can you tell me a little bit about how sometimes you guys are a little bit ahead of the curve on that?
I mean, that's a great point. That happens all the time. And, the reality is we have our float pool, and, within our float pool, we kind of have a rating system, and it's all based on client reviews. We send those out to our clients after, someone has worked at their location. So we keep those all on file, and we ask a series of questions. And, they're rated 1 through 5 on a number of different things. And so, we have our best employees just like any organization would. So when these full-time opportunities come up, those are the first people we go to that are in our float pool. But also we keep a prospect list just like anyone in sales that's going to keep a top 10 or a top 20 target list, maybe a big national account they've been trying to get into for a while. You're going to continuously follow up with that account until you can finally get your foot in the door. Well, the same as with recruiting. We have, candidate pipelines of people that we know have phenomenal reviews. They have great experience, but you know what? They're looking for something specific, but we're going to keep them warm and make sure that we show them some love every once in a while. We still check in once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is, and just say, hey, how's your current job going? Anything I can help with, let me know. And they might say, hey, I'm looking for this specifically. And then, yeah, like you said, with our relationships in the industry with, maybe a VP or a director of pharmacy or, a CEO at a place, they might give us a call and say, hey, this, no one's supposed to know this yet, but we're making a move here, or we're adding a position here. Who do you got for us? And then those are the first people we call. And it happens all the time. They get in, they get offered the job, and they have the job. And like you said, it was never advertised. There was never a public posting. It was all based on the relationships we have with the client to give us that information, and then the relationships we have with our employees or, candidate pool, so to speak, or pipeline. So those two relationships are how we land a lot of our positions that never actually get advertised online.
So it sounds like it actually goes both ways, where maybe an institution's kind of inundated with 100 applications or even 50 applications. Like when you go look for a service, you look for a referral because you're like, okay, well, great, I've got 50 that I can pull up on Google, but how do I know which is the best one? So tell me a little bit about how you've built relationships with the institutions so that they can trust that the people you send are the best people.
So we have 35 offices across the country, and we do that just so we can try to have a local presence in as many major markets as we can, so that we can go and visit our customers regularly and show them how much they appreciate and just how much we appreciate their business. And we can bring them things, we can meet them for lunch and just take care of them and just know how much we appreciate working with them. And then, like you said, if they're in a market where they're saturated with pharmacists, a lot of times that sounds like a good thing, like, oh, I can pick from anyone, but it can be even harder if they put out a posting and now they have 200 applicants that on paper they all kind of look the same. And when we have that trust built up of, hey, we know Careerstaff Rx, they send us quality people every time because, they take the time to really get to know and interview their employees. They're going to give us a call and say, hey, we're overwhelmed. We have way too many applicants. Do you have, 2 or 3 that you would highly recommend that you can send us? And then we'll send them over their references or any reviews that we already have on file from a client. And then a lot of times our folks will get picked from that list because they're just too overwhelmed, with so many applicants. And I don't know, kind of the funny part is the pharmacy world is so small that we'll have references on file from maybe a couple of directors or managers, and then we'll send that over to a new client or potential client, and they'll be like, oh my goodness, I actually went to pharmacy school with, their old supervisor, Bill, or, whoever it is.
Sure.
And then they'll call that person, and then they'll be like, oh my goodness, yeah, we had her for a 4-month maternity leave coverage, and we just absolutely loved her. You would be lucky to have an employee like that. That thing happens weekly. You know what I mean? It just happens all the time, that not only are our relationships helping with that, but we're connecting people together now. And, a lot of times people wouldn't get that experience if it wasn't for working, with a company like ours.
So tell me, let's say I am, kind of 3 months from graduation, and I want to go look and see what jobs you have. So tell me a little bit about how that works. Now, I know you've got some jobs posted on the website, but you're telling me that it's actually better just to kind of contact you, talk to, see what kind of the goals are. How does that process work? Do I go to, I'm in Iowa, for example, or in the Midwest. Where would I go if I'm in the Midwest to look for someone? Do I call someone locally? Do I contact you? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can always call us directly, or you can visit our website. So our main website for all disciplines is careerstaff.com, but you can go to careerstaffrx.com, and that's where you can view all job postings, that we have at the moment. But we also have a quick apply button that you can apply for a position with us, even if there isn't an active posting in your area. And then that way we have all of your information. And then a recruiter is going to get back to you within 24 hours to set up that first preliminary call. And the reason that's good, and even you use the example of, in Iowa, let's say we didn't have an active posting in your area, and you might be like, well, I don't want to waste my time, or whatever the case is. Well, it's a quick application process, and the first phone call is very quick, and it's basically just to start building that relationship and building that trust. So there's a couple of different things we can do from there. We can actively market you to any clinics or pharmacies in the area and say, hey, I've already had a conversation with Tony. I feel really good about him. Here's 3 references. Would you be interested in meeting with him? Or when an order does come through, the first person we're going to call is the person that we have in our pipeline in that area that we've already had that first phone call out the way. So even if there isn't something open today in your market, or maybe it's not something you're looking for, apply anyway, so we have your information on file so that you'll be the first phone call or email when something does come up and we don't have to start from scratch.
Okay. Well, there's one other thing I wanted to ask. So some pharmacists are maybe a little more on the introverted side. I'm a natural extrovert. You sound like an extrovert, somebody that has no problem being in a crowded room with a bunch of other people. Tell me a little bit about what maybe you can do with somebody who's maybe a great listener, hard worker, but going and promoting themselves is a really tough thing for them to do. It's tough for them to say nice things about themselves. What recommendations do you have for someone that is maybe a little more on the introverted side?
We deal with this all the time, and sometimes the first round of interviews aren't always the best reflection of how someone's going to be as an employee, and that's part of why companies like us exist, to help the candidate and to help the client as well. But there's so many different positions as well within the pharmacy industry that that work perfectly for someone with that personality style, where they don't need to be, doing the consultations or answering the phones or things like that. And so our recruiters are really good at asking specific questions to draw on that information. And it's just important to have such good references so then other people can speak for you as well. some of our best employees, honestly, come from the introverted side where the first interview, we were just like, we didn't have a whole lot to talk about, but I could tell that they're talented. And then all of a sudden we get them in a position where, they don't have to be speaking with the customer on a regular basis. Maybe it's a specialty pharmacy or whatever the case is. And, we get calls from the managers or directors just saying, what a phenomenal employee they are. And they just do such a great job. And so that's just so important to kind of find a position that's tailored to them. And maybe we wouldn't put someone, in a retail setting where they have to do those consultations. And we have other positions that are going to be more on the closed door end, and they don't have necessarily that public interaction. And then it kind of works best for both sides.
Awesome. Well, I've spent 20 minutes asking you questions. Is there anything you wanted to say that maybe I didn't ask?
I know we get asked a lot, just what does the job market look like? Well, I'm in my office right now and I'm looking at a map of all 50 states. It depends on where you're at. I know certain areas with, enrollment class size and pharmacy schools, it can feel tough sometimes, or maybe discouraging. I just keep applying to these places and it's just so hard. There's just so much competition. I would just highly recommend, have a conversation with us and just see where we can help. Because a lot of times we can help put you to the front of the line. And because of our relationships with the decision makers, that you might not have that opportunity on your own, and just let us see where we can help. And if we can, that's great. And if we can't, we'll keep in touch until we can. So I would just advise anyone that's getting ready to graduate and maybe you heard things that there's certain markets that are tougher than others. I'd say let's just have a conversation and see where we can help you out.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for being on the Pharmacy Leaders podcast.
No, this was great. Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate it. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Sounds good.
Support for this episode comes from Goodnight Pharmacology, 350 brand and generic name drugs with classifications, a leading resource for students in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. Print, ebook, and audiobook available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.